Hello friends, I'm Marland and this is MV Pittman Cross Sim Racing. And this is a GSI GT Max 32. It might be a 32 Max, but I can't remember. I'm illiterate and I can't read. Let's take a look and see. They call it a GT Max 32, so I may have been right. Today I want to tell you about the QRX and why I use it and why I don't think it's the best, but it's the one I use. So I made a video, and probably about 15 minutes ago, I said, hey, in the next video, I will tell you why QR2 won the QR wars. And really there's kind of three things that are great about QR2, and it's two of them are kind of built into it, and the third one somebody added. So let me set this wheel down and tell you why I don't have a QR2 on this one. So Fanatec, who makes the QR2, was inspired by a design from Crontec. And what they did was make a quick release with a lip that pulls back, two rods, and fit on the end of a conical shape like this with grooves in the side. So it's a cone, it goes in, it locks, and it doesn't come out. Let's try again. And this time we'll make sure that it's right side up. Let's try that one more time, right side up and aligned. There we go. You gotta push all the way in. This thing is long. And one of the things that is terrible about their situation at Fanatec is they want you to use their wheels. That's fair, they sell stuff. But if you use their wheelbase and you don't use one of their wheel, then you're not getting force feedback, which is awful. You pay a bunch of money for a wheelbase and then it doesn't do what it's supposed to do if you don't use their wheel. They do provide a solution, and that's called a podium hub. They also have a couple of other solutions like a universal hub and a wheel hub. And I've made other videos about that, but let's focus on this podium hub for a minute. This thing lets you mount shifters, and it has a pattern for 50.8 millimeters and 70 millimeters. I've also made a video about this podium hub and spacers and adapters and quick releases, so I don't want to get too bogged down in that. But in order to put this on a regular non-Fanatec wheel, you need these hole patterns, and in order to use a Fanatec wheelbase, you need this quick release because you cannot remove the base side of your quick release from a Fanatec wheel and then just replace it with like something that matches up like against normal wheels or normal quick releases. So the thing that is terrible about that is that essentially Fanatec has locked you into their ecosystem, and they did it with intent. So I mentioned that the QR2 system is great, and the first thing is that conical shape. The next thing is that it bolts into devices from the outside. So you get adventurous and you say, oh, I want to put a quick release on my wheel, and then you see that you want to mount it, and you look at your wheel and you look at the back of it and it has threads. That's great if you have one of these, because you can just put M5 bolts in the correct pattern into it. However, the pattern on this quick release is not a set of 70, and it's not a set of 50.8. It's just weird stuff. What I'm doing now is taking this off, but trying to talk to you while I do it. And as you know, I don't edit my videos, so you're gonna watch me do it, and I'm gonna keep talking, but I'll try to be quick about it. So the reason they do this, you saw earlier where I tried to mate the quick release base side to the wheel side and it didn't go all the way in, that's because there's a specific orientation for the pins that are inside of a wheel. And I'll show you the wheel side of this quick release. Maybe you saw it before when I pulled the bars back by pulling on the lip. But if you bend one of those pins, you're gonna have a real bad time because then your wheel will not work. It transmits both power and data through those pins. And if even one of them gets bent, you're not gonna get all the stuff you need. Might be power, might be ground, might be some sort of fake weird USB signal that they're trying to pretend they use. So I put those down, I put my tool down, even though you're supposed to put things away, not just put them down. But look at this. This is the bottom. You pull this back, and if you see the pins, they are in a specific orientation. If you try to mount this way, the holes are wider than they are this way. So what this quick release does is orient your wheel so you don't mount it upside down. I'm gonna argue that's smart. The problem is other wheelbases with a 70mm pattern don't actually care. What they want is to mate the wheel. But other wheelbases aren't using pins to pass data through. Some of them use wireless connections. Some of them are doing this new thing called USB, which we'll get to soon. So the thing about this particular quick release is that it has holes for both QR2 and 70mm patterns. And this is weird, this is unique, this is great. But there's a company called Simoob that is making QRs that only have 70mm patterns, but also made up to quick QR2 quick releases. That company has done some work that I would argue belongs to God. I'm happy about it and I'm okay with it. Even though Fanatec created a system that has a conical shape that gets your QR locked in tight and orients it correctly. And even though they have this weird pattern, Simoob basically got rid of two problems. One, that this hub is expensive. So they just came out with a clone of it that's not expensive. They call it an S hub. I'm not gonna pull it out and show you because it looks just like this. It's a clone. And you can tell the difference between a clone and the original, right? But the other thing about it is they fixed that 70mm pattern and USB pass-through. So what they did was copy someone else's stuff, which apparently is what Simoob does, and they created a system like what Fanatec has, but it's based on USB, and you can use it with any wheel that connects one side and another with pogo pins and power and data, USB. So that's great. And people were DIYing this solution before. They were using a system from Dan Suzuki, also a person doing work that we would attribute to God. So QR2 was the kind of end all be all once they fixed that third problem. Once they got USB pass-through working on it, good to go. However, before that happened, I was thinking about using NRG, which is okay, but getting back to that NRG thing and this wheel, NRG cannot bolt in from the outside. It has to bolt from the inside of the wheel out. So unless you want to take this wheel apart, which you can do, you need a spacer so that you can mount that on there. And I'm not going to demonstrate that. The idea here is that QR2 is great because it has a USB pass-through solution which someone added, as a 70mm pattern which someone added, and it has a conical shape which they stole. Well, they didn't steal it, they were inspired by Contec, was already doing it. And so on to the question 10 minutes later, why are you not using QR2? Why are you not using QR2? I am using this quick release from Cube Controls called QRX because it does all the things that I just mentioned about QR2. It has 2 bars with a conical shape. It is super stiff, but it does the same thing. If you look inside, you see those 4 dots. Those are pogo pins for a USB pass-through. So if you have some other wheelbase, like a Fanatec, and you need to mount the base side of QRX, you just put them together, but your shaft gets really long. Usually not a problem for most people. So you pull this back, and it's really hard to do with, without a wheelbase holding this. So what I'm gonna do is demonstrate. Your wheelbase is standing here. You put it on like that, but it's not gonna go on until you pull this part back. But this is really, really strong. It's probably the one thing that I wish I really could get out of QR2. But Cube Controls had a couple of issues with Micro Center, I guess. They broke up, which meant that a wheel QR system that was normally $250 for both a base side and a wheel side became like $40. Basically, Micro Center had a fire sale. So I was at my local Micro Center and I bought every one they had. Then I live in Indianapolis where there's a Micro Center pretty close. And there's another Micro Center in Cincinnati, which is about 2 hours away. I drove to that one, bought every one they had. Then I had 2 friends. One, his name is Jeff. One, his name is Neil. Neil sent me all of his except one because he's like, QRX is pretty good, but I can take your money. So I sent him the money for a couple of QRXs. And then Jeff, who also witnessed the fire sale, bought some. Then I said, oh, well, I'll sell you my base side and maybe I'll sell you some of what I got. He got tired of that, went to an NRG based system on his VRS wheelbase, and he gave all those back to me in trade. So I probably got like 15 of these, dude. I have enough. So one of the cool things about this is that it does the USB pass-through. It has the conical shape and it mounts from the outside. And on the outside, it mounts in both 70 and 50.8. So arguably, that's better than QR2. The problem was the price, and I ran into an opportunity to fix that. But if you're looking for it now, you're gonna pay a lot of euros because Cube Controls in Italy has them. I guess even if they were priced appropriately, if you're in the US, you gotta pay shipping, you gotta pay tariffs. There's a store on eBay called the Racer's Mark. I do think I bought a couple of wheel sides from them as well. So like I said, I have plenty. This does everything that I need to do. And once a base side is mounted on your wheelbase, usually I just grab, pull, and then insert. Not really a big deal. And it's rock solid. You saw how strong that spring is that holds us back. It doesn't move. So, I'm pretty happy with QRX. I've got USB pass-through. You're wondering, hey, how does USB pass-through work? Every wheel that connects over USB has a connector on the PCB that usually comes out through a thing in the wheel and then goes to your USB port on your computer. The way QRX works is there's a PCB in here that connects to Cube Controls wheels that have a USB port on their PCB, just like every other wheel. And they basically have some intelligence in there that they can choose whether to run from the USB port and pass through their own system or run through their cable and then you plug it up like you normally would. Some of Cube Controls wheels also have Bluetooth. So, they're really nice wheels. Their QRX is nice, it's just expensive. Once that happened, I was on board. And that was really before Simu kind of blew up that whole USB thing with Fanatec. So if you're wondering, gee, I'm thinking about QRX. Well, that's where you get their QCon cable. So if you have a Cube Controls wheel, and maybe I'll demonstrate this on the wheel too, but normally if you have a wheel you just plug this magnetized connector with 4 pins into your wheel like that, and it stays. If you yank really hard, it might come off, but usually your wheel is just kind of rotating like that, and it doesn't really come off. If you yank it really hard, it does come off, but the cool thing is you don't get a broken wheel and you don't get a broken cable. You just get a disconnect, which you can deal with because just put it back on, get on about your business. So yeah, this goes on the base side, and then the other end just connects to USB. So you put this on your wheelbase, and then you just go put your wheel on. It also has some shim adjustments here. So if you're looking for a reason to say, you know what, my thing's not always loose because there's going to be some tolerance in this. They actually sell like a 0.5 millimeter, 1 millimeter, and I think 1.5 millimeter. It might be smaller than that. They might be micrometers. But the point is, they make adjustments so that every single quick release fits appropriately on this side. The hard part is that there's expensive componentry on both sides. If you have something like Zero Play from SimLab via HRS, they have all the expensive componentry on the base side, but there's no USB pass-through. So Zero Play almost had it. QR2 had the setup, the physical part, but they didn't have USB. Cube Controls kind of had all 3, but they were too much. QR2 wins because Simu fixed it. But I missed the bus on that one. But sometimes you miss the bus and you get a nice luxury ride, and I think that's where I'm doing right here. So yeah, let's show you that wheel on a QRX, and then we'll call it a day. So behind me, this is the Cube Controls GTX 2. So I assume there's a GTX 1 and it was okay, but this wheel doesn't have a Bluetooth connection, but it does have, see, you put that on the wrong way, it doesn't fit, that's nice. Put it on the right way, fits good. So driving along, this sticks in. This sticks into your wheel hub, your dedicated hub for sim racing, because you don't want to run this all the way to your computer because your computer's far away, right? Keep it in there so it gets in your Instagram shots. Also, there you go. If it comes off, just put it back on. It's usually pretty rock solid, but you know what I do? USB pass-through. So there's just a little PCB in there. You run a wire that goes from there to there. The hard thing about using this on non-Cube Control wheels is that you have to DIY a cable. So there's a few ways you can end up doing that. New wheels have USB-C, no wires, easy, just buy a cable. On the wheel side, for Cube Controls, it's a JST connector. What that means is you either got to do some soldering to connect 2 wires, or you got to do some crimping to get a JST connector on there. The term that you're looking for is, it is a JST XH 2.54 connection with a pinout that is not labeled. But if you get a multimeter and a cable, you can find out which one of these pins goes to a known pinout on the USB cable. So when you hook this up, ooh, better get all the way on there. Better do it the right way. So when you get this on there, you can run a test, a continuity test between this end and the pin in there to find out which one of those is which. The signals for this are fixed and known. The ones in there are unknown, but you can find out, and then you find out which pins you need to connect on your wheel side, and then you're good to go. So JST to JST for wheels that have JST, and then for USB-C wheels, you just make a USB-C to JST cable. Maybe we'll do a video on that, although our friend Ray at Gray's Dynamics has already done that. But if you like Cube Controls wheels, they come with a cable for QRX, so you don't have to do anything. You just plug it in on both sides, flip a switch, and you're good to go. If you don't like Cube controls wheels, or you just have wheels other than that, QRX is still valid. The Simoob connection that we talked about winning, it also requires a DIY cable. There's no real universal solution other than USB-C, which generally you're not going to make a USB-C cable. But what I do, I just buy a USB-C cable and cut it, and then make the other end what I needed it to be, in this case JST XH 2.54 with the correct pinout. It's worked out pretty well for me, but you know, you got to do a little bit of work. So sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not. So when it doesn't work out, don't blame me. I'll still be Marland at MV Pittman Cross Sim Racing. I'll see you guys in the next one.